Colin has been very much involved since the inception of the idea of creating the Eamont Way, an idea that emerged about 3 years ago. And we have in this hall several people who have been key parts. That I don't know whether you want to, shall I embarrass you or not? We have Cecilia at the back, who can probably say it was her idea. I remember doing a walk with her at one stage and we're trying to plough our way through a farmer's field, through a public footpath which was non-existent at that time, it is now. We have Michael Firth here, who's been heavily involved, mainly doing legal work. We have, of course, Colin and other people. Also, there's Miles, who's been absolutely a champion of the Eamont Way for all during this period, and he has piloted through councils and his diplomatic skills of various hoops that have to be jumped through to get to where we are today. So, without more ado, I'm going to pass the floor to Colin, and he will speak for as long as he wishes to speak. We will then have a question and answer session. Then we have a surprise. Ooh. Because some of the people in the seats at the front are unknown to me and others, but they're not unknown to Colin. And he's going to give a little explanation of why they're here at a later stage, but you will find on your seat the map of the Eamont Way, together with some lyrics of a tune, which we are all going to sing. A celebration of Eamont Way, Eamont Way is sound. And on that note, please, I will not pass the floor to Colin. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that overwhelming introduction. I'll struggle to live up to that now. Thanks for coming tonight. It was a lovely spring evening, and I hope you'll enjoy the story of the last few years of how we've been able to make the Eamont Way happen. There's 4 parts to this evening's little presentation and entertainment. The first will be without pictures. I'll just talk about the story of the people. It's a story of vision, selflessness, hope, setbacks, community cooperation, and ultimately success. And then the second part will be a little bit of a story guide to the Eamont Way, and giving a bit of background of the pictures that we come across. And then thirdly, a little bit of explanation of the current challenges and realizations of what been in the process of helping make this happen, and in the situ group, that's strategic and integrated Ullswater for transport. Even though I just said that wrong, I can never say it right. Like, we need a snappier title. And then finally, we've got, it's a first for the Friends of the Ullswater Way. It's also a world first here in Pooley Bridge Village Hall. It's the world premiere performance of Walking the Eamont Way, written by a man of 53 years in showbiz, Peter Michael Rowan, and performed by 3/4 of the Errant Thieves. The Errant Thieves are a very well-known local band, been going for 89 years. And because one of the members is missing, they're now the Errant 3 this evening. So very much looking forward to that part of the evening after I've stopped speaking. So let's crack on. Now then, the computer's gone off. Cecilia, I might need you for your password again. Because it's Cecilia's computer, and at least you want to do it in naked yoga or something. There we go. Thank you very much. Right. So that's the front. That's a map that we've done of the Eamont Way. We're just going to leave that up there for a wee while. And the story of the people now. So the older I get, the more I realise, probably a bit after my father, who's in the audience here tonight, that it's people that matter more than things and stuff. And this is a story of people coming together and getting the skills together and helping out and being positive and helping and coming to the fore when others have stepped back because things have been going wrong. And I calculated over the 3 years, about 4,000 hours of free time has been given by about 6 to 8 people across the group. And somehow we managed to create fundraising and local council spending of over £100,000 to make this walk happen. And that's a real achievement that the group has made happen. Nothing ever just happens. It's a collective will and spirit that's made it the case. Now, Tim touched on why have I made my roots here, and it goes back to my parents. Some of my earliest memories were coming up to the Lake District on holiday from Blackburn in I was 5, 6, 7, Coniston originally, and then about age 10 came to Ullswater, and we had a trailer tent on Waterside campsite just down the lakeside there. And I distinctly remember me and a couple of friends being left by my dad for a week watching the 1982 World Cup, when it was this time more than any other time we're going to get it right. But featuring Brian Robson with a broken arm, and they didn't get it right. We were watching that on a 4-inch wide black and white television screen. But those things stick with you. So, and then subsequently in life, I went and travelled backpacking around Asia, Australia, and so on, and then worked in Asia, in Hong Kong for 7 years. But I kept being drawn back to the area and really wanted to come back. So when the chance to buy the tea room came up in year 2000, from Leah, who's in the audience, parents tonight, we knew that it was a great village, and if you did your job right, you could make a good business. And that's what drew me back. And it's been a real privilege to bring my family up here. The older I've got, the less inclined I've felt to go anywhere else, because within these 900 square miles, it is the most achingly beautiful landscape you'll find anywhere. So it is a privilege to be here tonight. So and this is all about making it more accessible to everyone. So there we go with that. Also, Cecilia's story. Cecilia really should be up here tonight, but she doesn't like speaking out loud, and she won't even raise her hand. It was her idea. Cecilia came to live in Hartsop at the other end of the lake 8, 9, 10 years ago, and she brought with her a wealth of experience from being helping a footpath and cycleway around Oxford, and so she had family and friends coming to visit by train to Penrith Station, and then was frustrated that they couldn't walk to Pooley Bridge and then get the boat down to the other end of the lake and arrive in a wonderful way. And events and Cecilia's spirit have galvanised around her and made it happen. So thank you officially, Cecilia. Now, going back to 9-10 years, in 2014, the parish councils and the Ullswater Association that I'm involved in were asked by the National Park to contribute what visions they had for the Ullswater Valley, and they formed an Ullswater Valley plan. And one of the aspirations was to have a walk that linked up right around the whole lake, 21 miles, like Derwentwater recently had completed. And so that was listed as an aspiration, and nothing much happened for a while. And then December 6, 2015, the lake rose by 12 feet. Pooley Bridge got destroyed, and suddenly Pooley Bridge was on the world news, and it was a proper visual and emotional disaster as a building that was treasured and loved had gone. Spirit came around the idea of the Ullswater Way, and people sort of said, let's make this happen. And 6 months later, it was open. So it was great credit to the National Park and others for making it happen. As a consequence of that, Cecilia's partner, Gordon, made a presentation to Parish Council about turning it into a cultural and artistic trail as well, celebrating the heritage of the lake. And the artists and creatives that had been resident and been influenced by the area, and that then turned into Friends of the Ullswater Way being founded, who amazingly have built 12 to 15 wonderful art installations around the lake. The first of which was the Roman seat up near the cockpit, and then Wainwright sitting stone, and then the beautiful poetry stones in Hallinghack Wood, then the artist's seat just past Silver Crag, the Dorothy Gate at Air Force, the Burkett Memorial at Pooley Bridge Pier, and the Clarkson Memorial here at Ullswater, amongst others. And then in 2019, the Friends of the Ullswater Way became a charity. And then there was starts to be talk of creating cycleways and footpaths linking up Penrith and Pooley Bridge. And Friends of the Ullswater Way realised that that was beyond the remit of their new charitable status. And so Michael Firth, here in the front row, had the idea of starting the Strategic and Integrated Transport Group for Ullswater, SITU for short, and invited people from around the parish councils around the valley to join to make a group up. And that started in 2019, and we spent quite a few meetings looking at maps, trying to work out routes and possibilities, and then realised a footpath was going to be needed separately to a cycleway or a multi-user path because of bridleway existences and so on, and what was possible. We settled eventually on a route, that meant then we started to list the landowners and think, do we know them? Who owns this field? Who owns that? What goes across there? And so on. And we settled on a route and then got the National Park involved. The local ranger, Susie Hankins, been a stalwart and very supportive throughout the whole process. And we started making plans about the route until Susie said to us that where the bridleway comes out at Kirkbarrow Hall outside Tyrrell, it pushed you onto the main road going to Tyrrell from here, and there was no footpath there. And it was 250 yards before you rejoined the existing footpath. And she did a dragon's den on us and said, I'm out. Because
be careful, because she's on the call. She's one of the Zoom.
Well, she's all right. She knows this. You know. Hello, Susan. And the National Park couldn't be supportive of a route that basically endangered the users of a footpath. And so this was a big issue that really did set us back. Fortunately, with timing and a bit of initiative, Cecilia and Neil Hughes, Councillor Neil Hughes, he's at the back there, who's instrumental in the next little hiccup that we overcame. Neil said there may be some funding at the end of COVID for initiatives that linked up villages and got people out walking and enjoying the fresh air and so on. And so we were encouraged to write some letters of support for this footpath. to local councillor Laura McClellan. Neil took it to Cumbria County Council meetings, and lo and behold, they got it passed as a minor improvement. And about 4 months later, this footpath was built 250 metres. It took them 3 weeks. I'm sure it could have taken less, but that's what they do. When you're working from 9 till 9:30, then have a break until lunch, and then you know it goes with road workers. Anyway, I think it got built, and £60,000 of footpath was built, and the local community was absolutely befuddled. What on earth is this here for? In the middle of nowhere, for no apparent reason. But it was our massive domino that enabled us to show to landowners, farmers, and interested parties that this thing was happening, and because of this will happen. And so, thank you, Neil, for your efforts on that. It was the biggest single thing to make it happen. I imagine there's not many times a politician can get thanked for something, Neil, is there? One unknown benefit of the footpath was that suddenly elderly residents and non-car owners in Tyrrell could get to Barton Church, and they started going to church more and using and going down the lane there to it. So that was a lovely initial consequence. So there we go. And then we started to have a list of the landowners, who knew them, what did they own, and so on. Thankfully, if we started at the Penrith end, just after, on this side of the Junction 40, Cecilia's partner knew the landowner at Scarsgill there and made links there. He was supportive. The next farm along at Red Hills, Dawson's, they were cooperative and very, very supportive, and they've been helping us build fences and gates and so on. The next farm along was owned by Lowther Estates. We wrote to them. There's a field there that as you come up from the river, and it goes sort of back towards Clifton and away from Pooley Bridge, and it also unhelpfully went diagonally through a field of what's normally planted with corn, and it was a big concern because it was a strange route for a footpath, but it's a long established public footpath. Cecilia spoke to Andy Sims at County Council, who's in charge of footpaths and rights of way, and went to look at old maps to see if there was an alternative route, and we couldn't see any that we could reclaim or anything. And so we were a bit resigned that this path that would be busy with people with dogs and stuff, and possibly cattle on at times, would be a really difficult and counterintuitive part of the route. And so we wrote to Lowther Estates, who owned the farm, said, could we maybe move the path to the edge or just over the wall to the next field? And we received a straight no. That was against their policy. So we parked that and moved on to the next farm. The next farm was George Fabby at Kirkbarrow Hall, who the new footpath was directly opposite. Michael and I had a meeting with George, and he's an enterprising fella. He was already planning to create a little parking and picnic area opposite the pavement, and put he's got his new Fabby's fabulous milk stand and coffee and tray bakes, and that's already become a popular little station halfway along the walk. So George was very then supportive of allowing us to, at the end of the path, rather than going down to the church, to take 8 feet of his field away and to create a path that was parallel to the road, build a little bridge over to the next field, which was then the end of his land. So he's given up his land freely and willingly to us for everyone's benefit. Likewise, the next farm along. That was owned by Dale Main. That farm in particular weren't very keen, shall we say, on tourists and visitors going through the middle of their farmyard. So they were very keen to have it at the edge of their farmland. And them, in conjunction with Dale Main, allowed us to do that and continue it, which then brought us back onto a bridle way and to the beautiful Mill Moor, which is like maybe 5 or 6 acres of moorland in the middle of farmland that just appears out of nowhere, and it's a complete beautiful contrast to the landscape, and it actually brings you at a climactic point where you're leaving the farmland and then the lake and the hills are all suddenly tantalizingly in view. So Dale Main were very cooperative about us signposting the path through that land. And then as you start to drop into the village, Hall House Farm with the Colstons, again, we're very cooperative about creating a permitted path at the edge of their farmland rather than going through the farmyard, and created a lovely route down into the village. So we've got 3 permitted paths where basically the farmers acknowledged that there's an existing footpath, but they would give up extra land to create a better route for the public. And then that just left us with the one that said no. And so it was getting very close to everything being in place. And so I went and tapped on the window and said, "I'm very worried about your field." They said, "Why? What?" And so there's going to be about 40,000 people walking through the middle of it. And whatever you're going to be growing there is going to get wrecked, potentially. And Alan Errington, he was absolutely fine and supportive. So he said, "Well, that's all right then, I'll tell Lauder." And so if we'd have gone to him in the first place and got his agreement, got him on board, rather than going to the landowner, we went the wrong way around. And he's been he walked it on Sunday with a group of friends, and I chatted with him at the tea room, and he's thoroughly enjoyed it. So we managed to get the route. The existing footpath still goes stupidly diagonally through his field, but we've got a nice fenced off section now at the edge of the field that brings you out onto a little lane into Stockbridge, which is all lovely. So that was the small episode of the landowners. Then we went on to funding. Cecilia and Michael were much better at this. I had no interest at all in filling in endless forms. And also Susie, if you're there, really Susie. Susie was great from the National Park in applying for funding from FIPL, which is another acronym for Farming in Protected Landscapes, where we could get funding for creating the footpaths through farmland from the National Park, and it was deemed to be for the public benefit. So Susie did that. Michael and Cecilia approached Cumbria Community Foundation, County Council, Inspiring Eden, and is that everyone, Cecilia? Miles as well. Sorry, Miles as well. Yes. So thank you for gathering about £40,000 of additional funding for the fence building and the labour and the signs and so on to make it all happen. And then at the end of it all, we had the village specialist on media, Sam Bunting. She had loads of contacts in the media, and with her work with the Ullswater Association, she just in a couple of hours she had ITV, Border News, BBC website, Cumbria Life, the Herald, and the News and Star all come into the opening on the 14th of April, and so on the 14th of April this year, it was all ready. Amazingly, the sun started shining, and it was a lovely afternoon, even though the forecast wasn't doing that. And over 100 of us walked from Penrith Station to Pooley Bridge, and met on the pier afterwards for a lovely talk by Peter Hensman, who's in charge of the steamers, and he he relayed about the classic thing of when you're having a day's walk or a few hours walk where you drop in and out of conversations with one person and you stop at a gate and you pick up with another and you go back and join that conversation later and your conversation goes with the rhythm of landscape, and it was a lovely way of relaying the joy of walking in a wonderful space. So that's the first bit over. Sorry about that. There were no pictures. And now, Cecilia, I've lost the thing again, haven't I? I need your password back in, and then promise this is the last time. Right, we can start pressing some buttons now.
If you keep touching that.
Yes. So that's the Eamont Way from. This series of pictures sort of takes you from Penrith Station to Pooley Bridge, and we'll have a little chat about what we come across on the pictures. This is Cecilia wanted to demonstrate that you can come from London to Penrith on the train in 3 hours, and then walk to Pooley Bridge in a couple of hours. Then you get the steamer down and get to Hearts up by 5 o'clock, all in the same day. And she got a sponsored trip by the steamers for some of her relatives to prove that was the case, and that the vision could be marketed as an all-inclusive, sustainable way of getting right into the heart of the mountains in a day in the most enjoyable manner. So well done, Cecilia, there. Penrith Station. It opened in 1846. It was the burgeoning sort of the peak of the rail travel. The same year, or very close to the same year, as Windermere Station opened, and that transformed Windermere, which into a huge tourist destination for the Victorians, and that has remained the case since. Penrith, being 4 or 5 miles away from Ullswater, meant Ullswater was kept safe from the Victorian tourists in that sense, but not from all of them, because in the 1880s, Thomas Cook, who was a travel agent, you may have heard of him, recently got out of business, only just recently though. In the 1880s, he was a director of the Ullswater steamers, and he was encouraging the steamers to get a second boat, and he did do, so he could sell all-inclusive tickets from Manchester to Yanworth Station, because that was a bit nearer than Penrith to the lake, include the horse and carriage ride into the middle, down to the pier, and then onto the ferry. So that was one of the first all-inclusive days out on holidays from our Thomas Cook. It's a great touristy building, and trains currently run every leap year. So all quite sustainable. Theirs was on telly. I think that's Michael's telly. It's a Panasonic Viera. It looks like a 42-inch. All leaving on April the 14th for setting off on the Eamont Way walk. So that's nice. Directly opposite the station is Penrith Castle. Built originally as a Roman fort, I believe, and then in the 1400s, the late 1300s, it was built as a defensive building against the invading Scots. And then the Duke of Gloucester in the late 1400s, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, did it up and made it a lovely, luxurious residence. He went on to become Richard III, the king. And in his last 15 years, he went and spent a lot of time there. And he's the actual king who was found under a car park 10 years ago in Leicester. He still hasn't paid his fine, I believe. So that's the start off on your walk. Then you go past Aldi, B&Q, Halfords, iconic establishments of our age. down towards the motorway. Here's Cecilia, who are putting the first sticker on the road crossing, getting close to the motorway. And then here we are at junction 40 of the M6. It opened in 1971, junction 40, and here it is, busy. It was a Friday, so we get a lot of traffic build up on a Friday, and it was lovely to walk past it all quicker than what all the cars were moving. But the junction, the M6 being open, transformed Penrith, because all of the Scotland, England traffic went on the A6 right through the middle of Penrith up to this opening, and so it enabled Penrith to become so much more traffic free. Hasn't quite worked out that way, has it? The traffic's still coming through the middle. Maybe one day. There we go, and there's Daniel and I. If you look at the queue of traffic behind us going all the way back to Reghead, this is just after on the A66. They're just turning left in the bushes, and then away from all the pollution and noise and so on, and with our lovely new signpost there. There's another lovely new signpost in close up on the telly, and then the first interesting architecture is here, the Victorian Railway tunnels. There's two tunnels because there was a spur line for the Eden Valley, and we think there was an argument between the railways where they wouldn't share the rails with each other, and so two separate lots of lines were built. But it's a lovely way of going through these. Gordon's Cecilia, where's Cecilia gone? She's moved. Gordon's Cecilia, he likened it to going through Narnia, because as soon as you come out of these tunnels, you're suddenly into lovely farmland. All the traffic's left behind, bird noise becomes dominant, and the hills distant of the lake become your objective. And here we are going down through the Red Hills farmland towards the River Eamont, and there's the footbridge just in the distance there. If you notice the field at the back there, that's the Errington field that the path was diagonally through that I was talking about, which we'll come on to shortly as well. When you look left at this point, you see Gamworth Hall. It's a Grade 1 listed building from the early 1400s, and it is said to have the finest manorial hall in England. Though the great shame is we can't see it because it's a private building. It's a defensive peel tower, but it's been in the ownership of the Lowther estate since 1671. But I think they're trying to, they've started moves about starting to develop it. It will be a beautiful restaurant, hotel, B&B type place, because it's a stunning, stunning building in a very lovely location just above the river. So there is, hopefully one day we'll be able to get to see that in some capacity. And then there's the footbridge over the river. That was built about 2009 after the 08 floods, where the previous bridge got destroyed. So it's a relatively new structure, and it should be good and strong for a good few years yet. And here we are now on the Errington field. As you can see, it's not very clear where you can walk, and it's full of crops. And the new route is at the end of that field, where the line is for the between the next field. So it's been a great initiative to have that done. At the top of the field, and in Stockbridge, where you turn right, is Wordsworth House. And you might be thinking, oh God, another Wordsworth House. But it has got some actual heritage. Wordsworth's grandfather lived here, and William did stay with him in his childhood, and they were involved in the Arneson clothes shop at the time as well in Penrith. And William's grandfather bought going a bit further back in history. He actually bought the house off the father of Nelson's second in command at Trafalgar. So it has got proper historic relatives anyway, and connections. And it's a nice, great touristy building. Then we go through a nice summer scene on the bridle way through Thorpe and Tyrrell there. And then this is the road where the National Park refused us because it's a B road, traffic's coming through at 60 miles an hour, and you're up against the wall and the hedge and on the verge, and it's frankly it was dangerous. As you can see, look at the fear on this lake. And from another angle, there you see, and again where you're on a bend and it's all a bit treacherous and tricky. And then Neil, here we go. There's a nice picture of the pavement there on the left, which goes for 250 metres. Halfway along, we've got Michael and Veronica enjoying a coffee at Tommy's Fabulous Mill, and then relaxing at the picnic facility with Kirkbarrow Hall Farm behind, and Michael's high visibility safety. Here's Kirkbarrow Hall Farm from the 1500s, and above the porch here there's a statue of Mary, and below the coat of arms was from 1828. The owner was a John Cowper, who was a doctor in Harley Street, and I think they then had links with there's a John Cowper chemist in Penrith still to this day. So I think they're just the two are linked together. Then when you turn right on the original path, and just behind the Eamont Way is St Michael's Church at Barton, and this is a very special building, very special, Grade 1 listed. It is the only central Norman tower on a medieval church in Cumbria. There's a lot of qualifications to that, but it is a very beautiful building when you're inside. I recommend you go in if you've never been in. It's a lovely space. And the central part there was built in around 1150, so it's 900 years old. And if you think it must have been one of the first Norman buildings, because most of Cumbria wasn't in the Domesday Book, which was 1066 to 86, when all the properties were listed then. They only came up to this part of Cumbria about 1090 onwards, so it's survived intact and virtually unchanged inside, and is very rare for that, and is beautifully maintained in there as well. So that's a bad picture of us coming off the path on the other side of the road onto the parallel, the new fenced off part parallel to the road behind the hedge, nice and safe on the Fabby field. And there's Cecilia, Gordon, Jane, and Susie hanking National Park. I'm just going too quick. And the Eamont Bridge has been there, linking the fields up too. All part of the infrastructure. And then we go on to Mill Moor. Look at that, it's lovely. In the middle of farmland, there's suddenly this proper moorland, which is very evocative. There's me and Gordon nearly touching hands, and you can just see the glimmers of the lake there in the distance, which is lovely. And there's a little bit closer, and then Gordon a Whole House Farm after putting in another signpost. Good on you, Gordon. Lovely new sign at the Whole House Farm with the River Eamont below. I've not mentioned the etymology of Eamont. The best research I've come across is from Norman times as well. The French word for water, eau, mont, hill, or mont. And it's one of the shortest rivers in England, and it's one of the very few that goes inland in direction. So it starts at Pooley Bridge and goes towards Langwathby, and then meets the River Eden there, and then gets taken out up at Carlisle out to sea. And there's the suspects again. And there we are on Pooley Bridge Pier on the opening day. There's Michael being interviewed on his 42-inch Viera screen. And there's Cecilia too. So, and then there we are in the Herald. All of us having a little glass. And there we are in Cumbria Live, this month's edition. There's Catherine as well. Catherine's been instrumental in helping out in the red coat there. And Miles also. And there we go, that's the end of that. And then so it's been back a bit. It's open. It's out there. People are coming up to me in the street. People I don't know saying, "Oh, it's him. It's you from the walk." And Cecilia's been having this as well. And Jane and said that on the Friends of the Ullswater Way website, in the first week, over 6,000 new users logged on to get the map and so on. We published some leaflets a week ago because shops in the village were having angry people. Angry people were reported because there was no leaflet for the walk. Why haven't they done one? So we've done one. And so David and Leah, they were saying they're going from Pooley Bridge to Penrith, having a drink and then getting the bus back. People from Penrith are doing it in reverse. It's the people of Tyrrell who in 2016 in the community-led plan said they wanted a link between the villages, and it's just made life, I don't know, a bit nicer and a bit more civil. And the roads either way are dangerous and unfriendly and just not shouldn't be used for walking. So it's been a great thing to be part of. So thank you for everyone who's been part of it. So that's the end of that bit. I'll have a little drink right, point 3. There's only that picture. So being part of situ with Michael and the other members, Michael's a wonderful chair of situ. He always remains calm, and when disputes happen and tempers raise and there's no solution, he rises above in a serene manner over the landscape. We've got a collective desire amongst us to try and we'd love to have a cycle path between Penrith and Pooley Bridge. We'd love to have a cycle path down the edge of the lake, all the way down. It's the most beautiful road, but we're constrained by traffic being two ways. It's a narrow location, but it means that people can't enjoy one of the most beautiful parts of the natural landscape. And this is repeated elsewhere in the Lake District too. Grasmere and Bassantwaite and other places. Virtually every lake has got roads right next to it, which spoil the amenity and enjoyment. And if you go back 100 years, and I think we're at a point now of change going forward, but we go back 100 years or so. I was doing a little bit of reading about when did the car overtake the horse and the bicycle as the means of transport, and they said the tipping point was about 1930. Between 1890 and 1930, there was 500,000 to 1 million people used a bicycle as the dominant personal transport means, which is more than a horse. Railways were in their heyday, but that wasn't personal transport. But by 1930, there was then 1 million cars on the road out of a population at the time in Britain of 37 million. And the road tax was introduced. Ooh. There's only that one here. The road tax was introduced, and people got cars. They were buying cars. It was their car, and they were in their own, encapsulated in their own space. And they started, and they're paying a road tax, and it suddenly became in their minds their road. And bicycles and other things shouldn't be on their road. So this psychology has evolved over the last 100 years at least. All roads have been built for the car user and not really for anyone else. And I think we're suffering in this area very much the consequence of that. It only dawned on me recently that the A66 at Penrith has got 2 pedestrian crossings, one at junction 40, where you can get across using the Pelican crossing things, and the Kempley roundabout that used to be KFC. There you can get across as well. The next safe crossing going west, I went west and west. I thought Keswick, Cockermouth. There actually isn't a crossing that is for pedestrians anywhere for 40 miles west. And when we've been having discussions about the cyclists and walkers being cut off, the effect of the A66 is a wall of steel and plastic going past at 60, 70 miles an hour. And I've cycled across it, but I think I could be quick when needed to be. But for a family, you would never ever take your family across the A66 at Penrith. And you go to other countries that are cycle friendly and pedestrian friendly, and they're building tunnels with cycleways inbuilt with them as part of the fabric of what they do. And we've not done that, and it's created almost a Hadrian's wall there. I think the A66 is a Hadrian's wall that's splitting communities, not on purpose, but hopefully we can get that to change going forward.
In terms of the Dewey project,
yeah,
more than one councillor asked for extended cycle lane on the whole there. We think it's millions of pounds, and what we've got actually
nothing. Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is a comment from the Zoomers, so they can't hear you on Zoom, just to say this is near.
The AC viewing, whilst welcomed by from the majority of people, the same viewing also had far more cyclone friendly negativity. Well, they didn't try, but I'm afraid there were other voices.
When I went back to the 1930 amount of cars on the road versus population, then if you multiply it up to present day, where present day is 33 million cars on the road and 67 million population. But in 1930, there were 7,305 road deaths. If you multiply it up to current numbers, that would be equivalent to 350,000 people dying every year here and now. And so basically the cars were just knocking everyone off the road. Yes, the cars have got safer, and the latest death statistics were 1,500. When I was a youngster, there were 3,000 or 4,000 a year, but that's better technology and seat belts and crumple zones and all that. But it doesn't get the fact that the car has just dominated us and changed our enjoyment of the land that we all share around us. Those are just thoughts going forward for Situ's challenges and what we'd like to try and make happen. But it ain't easy. So I can't promise to be speaking here in 5 years' time saying, here we are at the next stage. But who knows? Maybe we can. So that brings me to the end of my part of talking. So if anyone would like to ask anything, fire away, and I'll try and waffle my way through an answer.
Great. I think you've given a brilliant snapshot of the difficulty of making change, but actually with a combination of passion, energy, different competences, skills of people, that actually you can make it happen. And I think, your talk of 3 years of really arduous work trying to influence all the people in that process, coming finally to fruition on the 14th of August, it was a brilliant story. And it's very rare you hear someone who goes through the whole process in a humorous way and in such a passionate way. So I salute you for the way in which you presented it today. So can you just now move to questions and answers? Are there, well, I assume there'll be some answers, I don't know, but questions anyway from the floor and then from the Zoomers.
How long is the walk?
5.5 miles.
Right. Very doable.
It is, and it's not too hilly either, so it's not too hilly. Yeah, so it's it does go down a bit with the river at Red Hills, but it's not steep.
I'll try and repeat the question. So again, for the benefit of the Zoomers who don't have microphone, the question was, how long is the walk? The answer was 5.5 miles.
Okay.
Please, next.
Just on that last point, the powers that be, are they receptive to your argument about footpaths and cycleways and making the road safe and so on?
Neil is the county councillor and he's on the new council for West London Furnace, and he's on the new 66 dual carriageway right through. And there's been people asking and they've not got anywhere. There's initiatives, but take for example the Threlkeld to Keswick railway track, which the national park were lambasted for making it a lovely smooth surface, tarmacking it, and when it was a gravelly mess after storms. It went from 120,000 people using it a year to over 400,000. So it's been massively popular and successful. And if you build it, people will respond and use it. And hopefully we'll get numbers from how many people are using the Eamont Way, and that might help us find another route for cycling and multi-user paths.
Very deep. The national park is most key.
Yes.
The mileage of footpath, including disability friendly footpath and cycling.
Yeah.
And cycling parking as well. The internal question is where get the money from.
Yeah. The national park have been really helpful with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've done everything we can. At the end of the day, they're obviously there telling us, look, am I right? We've got to balance the books before we try and get our vision. We've done everything we can.
Thank you.
There's been, huge discussions on this issue, but we've made very little headway, I have to say. But the city of the sustainable integrated transport for Ullswater is a small group of councils in the area chaired by Michael. And it keeps on trying to make a noise about it, but it's very, very difficult to make any headway. I mean, even my hobby horse is Stuybarrow Crag, where all these walkers on Ullswater Way have to compete with lorries and so on a very small section of the 8592, but to get an alternative vision for actually making secure routes for walkers, cyclists, it's very hard. So we're going to have another discussion on this later in this series, when we're talking about tourism and so on in this fighting. And Daniel here in the hall is one of the people who's heavily involved in that. So it's a subject which deserves debate in its own. But this is a fantastic example of what can be done with committed people.
Well, that's the question. Is it hard because of money, or is it hard to persuade people who are in government and this? Neil does a fabulous job. He's on your side every step of the way. What is it really that stops? We all hate the traffic. We hate it. And yet it gets worse, and you hear that the national park does want more punters, more everything. And is there really a good overarching philosophy?
Well, the national park are against more cars coming into the park. Pooley Bridge is designated by them as a strategic gateway where they want people to come into the park, leave the cars here, and then use other transport means. You can come to Pooley Bridge and have a week's holiday and not need your car at all. That's why they're against the Catbells car park, they want to remove the car park that was built temporarily on the entrance to the lake at opposite Waterfoot. and they're talking about extending the Threlkeld walk in order to get because Threlkeld's got nowhere really for all these visitors at that end to park their cars, and they've got a facility about a mile away, so they're looking at extending that to try and keep cars out of Keswick then. So they are trying, but it's a mixture of everything in life is so complicated and so many vested interests, and like we've had farmers give up the land for free, but not many people will give things up for free, and they've some of the landowners we've had initial discussions with about these multi-user paths and cycle paths. They don't want the volume of people coming through their land and so on, which is understandable. And so it's trying to just navigate your way through to try and make things happen. There's no one simple answer. It's just it's just having the spirit and will to try and knock the dominoes over one at a time and get some momentum.
Is anyone on the Zoom who wants to speak on this topic?
No.
Michael, do you want to say anything? Because you're right in the middle of all this hodgepodge of different
I thought that question just now was very interesting.
Yeah.
Michael, come and stand.
Come and split the street. So, yeah. Michael Firth is the chair of Situ.
I was just saying, I thought the question just now is an interesting one. What are the obstacles? Is it money or is it people? Actually, our experience so far has been that if you have something that officialdom can see is going to work, the money will come. So money actually isn't an issue. What is the issue is trying to piece together everybody who has to take part in these things to agree to what you want to do. So Colin gave a very good explanation of all the different people we had to approach and get agreement from one end to the other. And that actually is the issue. It's getting people on side. Actually, again, our experience has been that once people understand what you want to do, and particularly if you can explain that there's a benefit for them, then they'll come on side. A very good example of that is George Paddy at Kirkbarrow. Clearly, the path going past his farm, where he can now sell his milk, his meat, and coffees and tray bakes to passing walkers, it's a win-win for everybody. So actually, he was then quite happy to let us have a piece of his land. So yes, it's people rather than money, I think. If you can build something that's going to work, then the money will come your way. That's our experience anyway. But I think the big lesson of this, which is actually the same lesson as the 10,000 Daffodil project, which some of you will know about, is that it's a massive community effort. It's a lot of people with lots of different skills all coming together. And one or two of us couldn't have done it. It's because we had quite a large group of us, all with different skills, all bringing different things to the party, that were able to do it. Right? And with Cecilia, you've been involved in all sorts of different bits of, particularly the money side, and you'll know how many different people have had to be involved somewhere along the line.
Are there any more questions? Maybe take another question from the hall and anything from the viewers?
Okay.
From the hall, thank you.
Going back to the Eamont Way, is there a way of monitoring how many people use it? So that will obviously help you know.
On the Ullswater Way, there's on some bridges, there's some lasers that count the footfall. So we may need to ask the National Park to put some of them along in strategic locations so we can get an indication, and that'll help our case going forward. So it's a good idea.
Please.
There is one question from the Zoomers. Was potential increased litter cited as a concern for from any of the landowners?
I don't have anyone mention litter. I've not had that discussion with anyone, no.
I have just an answer to the previous question. I just had a discussion even today with Susie from the Park Authority, who said that there are counters, as you know, around the Ullswater Way. I was trying to find out what is the latest figure on the number of people using the way. And she told me that in one site they have 70,000 people using the way. I think it used to be higher than that, to be honest, before COVID. So I can't tell whether that's a good figure or a bad figure, but certainly to put these counters up makes a lot of sense.
Hello?
Last question. Yes.
As the owner of a large but unliftable dog, would we get any problems with any of the spinals?
Oh, there's no climbing. They're all gates. Yeah. There's some steps up the bridge. Yeah, there are steps up the bridge. Yeah.
Can you just explain that was due to the question about dogs?
Oh, dogs. The question was lifting dogs over stile. So it's flat ground apart from the bridge over the River Eamont, where it's about 10 steps on each side.
It's not liftable. I've taught him to climb styles.
Right, now on to the best part of the evening. Time for the world premiere.
Well, should we do it next? Just after a couple of you do it now or at the end before the refreshments? Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do your introduction?
It's my great pleasure to introduce Peter Michael Rowe, June Swift and Gwen Bailey. It's the Errant 3, the world premiere of Walking the Eamont Way.
So chorus, walking on the Eamont Way, walking on the Eamont Way, from Penrith town to Pooley Bridge, walking on the Eamont Way. Well, you leave the railway station at 11:45, heading out across the motorway. You tunnel down below the tracks and under the bridge. Watch the river, watch the cat cross the river on the Eamont Way. Walking on the Eamont Way, walking on the Eamont Way, from Penrith town to Pooley Bridge, walking on the Eamont Way. Up the hill to Stockbridge with its old Wentworth house. The Queen's Head is tempting you to stray. You stagger back and sober up past Kirkbarrow Hall, and St Michael's is just off the way. Walking on the Eamont Way, walking on the Eamont Way, from Penrith town to Pooley Bridge, walking on the Eamont Way. Now you're on the last deck now through the riverside fields, Millmore and Holhouse Farm. Pooley Bridge and Granny D's, some cake and a tea, and a steamer trip will do you no harm.